They fined me $750 for hanging a single flag on my porch, called it visual clutter. 3 days later, I got a letter saying I was trespassing on the property I'd owned for 11 years. That's when I decided the board had no idea who they were dealing with. Welcome to HOA Story. I'm Daniel Rhodes, civil engineer out of Plano, Texas. And yeah, I'm the guy who once measured streetlight wattage for a living. If you're new here, I dig into how ordinary homeowners fight back with the law, not fists. Hit subscribe if you care about fairness in your neighborhood. And tell me, where are you watching from tonight? My dad built this place with his own hands in 1998. Cedar beams, 12-foot ceiling, and a porch wide enough for 3 rocking chairs and a Labrador. When he passed last year, I swore I'd keep it standing the way he left it. Honest wood, clean lines, not 1 inch sold out to plastic trim or fake heritage plaques. That promise kept me going through the grief, until the HOA saw me moving back in and decided I didn't belong anymore. The first notice arrived folded in half like it wanted to sneak in. Violation. Unauthorized occupancy. Fine, $750. Remedy. Vacate premises pending compliance. I called the listed number. The woman on the other end, clipped voice, told me, "Sir, this isn't personal. You forfeited residency under Section 14B. I asked what that meant. She said, "You abandoned for more than 2 years. The covenant is clear." Then she hung up. I wasn't about to let my father's home become some committee's side project. I went to the next meeting at the clubhouse, a tan stucco building with a stone fountain out front that never worked. The board sat in a row, 5 of them, behind folding tables draped in blue cloth. At the center was President Cheryl Layton, sharp suit, sharper smile. She looked right at me when I spoke. "Ms. Layton, the deed's in my name. You can't call me a trespasser." She tapped her pen twice and said, "Mr. Rhodes, we have bylaws. You left for longer than 24 months. That triggers a revalidation process, which you failed to complete. The home is under administrative review." "Review for what? You're a homeowners association, not a court." She leaned back, smug. "Then maybe you should have kept your father's dues current." That's when I noticed the new faces around the room. Half of them weren't even residents. Contractors, developers, a man from a property management firm I recognized from city work. Something was off. After the meeting, a neighbor I hadn't seen in years, an older guy named Walt, caught up with me in the parking lot. "They're planning something, Daniel. You didn't hear it from me, but there's talk about reclassifying certain lots as common parcels. Yours is on that list." I asked him why. He said, "Because of the pond, the setback lines. It's the cleanest square on the block. They want it for an amenity expansion." He looked down, voice lower. "I tried to vote against it. They said I missed quorum by 1 ballot." That night, I pulled the old metal box from my dad's workbench, the one labeled property. Inside were the original plats, survey maps, and a folded deed with the county recorder's seal dated 1998. I laid them out on the kitchen table, the same one my mother used to polish every Sunday, and started cross-referencing parcel numbers. By 2 a.m., I found it. Lot 23B wasn't listed as part of the HOA's common interest area. It was individually deeded outside their jurisdiction. My dad must have fought for that clause back when they formed the association. He always hated the idea of a board telling him what color to paint his shutters. Still, I needed to confirm. The next morning, I drove to the Collin County Records Office. Low brick building, smelled like paper and mildew. The clerk, a woman with a name tag that read M. Cooper, typed the parcel number and printed a chain of title report. She handed it to me with a faint smile. "You're clean, Mr. Rhodes. HOA doesn't own a nail on that property." I asked for a certified copy and paid $14.75. Worth every cent. I slipped it into a clear binder sleeve, labeled it Exhibit A, and thought, "All right, Dad, time to finish what you started." But I didn't go back to the board right away. I knew better. Bureaucracies feed on confrontation. They document it, twist it, turn it into evidence against you. Instead, I started collecting. Every notice, every voicemail, every piece of paper that crossed my mailbox went into a folder labeled Exhibit B, Harassment. Dates, times, signatures. I built a timeline. Within 10 days, I had 6 separate citations. Improper landscaping, $250. Unapproved porch light, $175. Excessive water use, $110. Mailbox style violation, $95. And 2 duplicates of the same trespass fine. That's $1,380 in 10 days. The numbers weren't random. They were tactical. They were trying to force me into arrears, justify a lien, and then take the house under maintenance recovery. I sat on the porch that evening, watching the sun burn low through the pines, and realized this wasn't just about me. Cheryl and her board were using technicalities to clear out old owners, bring in new ones, raise the association's dues, and partner with developers. My father's home was collateral damage. I whispered, "Not this one." And that's when the real plan began forming. Quiet, methodical, lawful. I started with the county appraisal site, cross-checking parcel histories for every property in the subdivision. Most had been absorbed into the HOA's recreation corridor overlay after 2020. Only 3, including mine, were exempt. I highlighted them in yellow on a printed map, each little square a target waiting to be claimed. The following week, I met my old colleague, Eric Monroe, at a diner off Parker Road. He was a retired city planner with a permanent coffee stain on his shirt pocket and a habit of sketching easement maps on napkins. He looked at my printouts, squinting behind his bifocals. "See here?" he said, tapping the line between my lot and the retention pond. "That's a drainage easement, not a shared utility corridor. You control the access point. So they can't claim it as communal? Not legally. But they can bluff until you make them prove it. Most folks fold before it gets that far." He paused, chewing a piece of toast, then added, "If they've recorded any amendments in the past year, you'll find them under document type CCR, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Look for recording dates, not adoption dates. That's where they slip in the tricks." That night, I downloaded every CCR amendment from the past 5 years, 42 pages in total. Amendment 2023-04 stood out. Common amenity expansion and maintenance contribution adjustment. I ran a line through the legal description. It referenced lots 17 through 22, but in a separate footnote, it said, "Adjacency to parcel 23 confers limited use rights." They'd planted a hook. Knowledge nugget number 1. In most U.S. states, HOAs can't unilaterally alter property boundaries or usage rights without recorded consent from affected owners. Doing so constitutes a cloud on title, a fixable offense, but a serious one. The next day, I sent a certified letter requesting clarification of adjacency clause under Texas Property Code FAR 209.005. The law gives them 10 business days to respond. I marked my calendar. Meanwhile, Cheryl doubled down. New notice taped to my deed. Non-compliance escalation. Exterior paint tone, non-conforming. Pantone, 4635C. My siding was natural cedar. No paint. They were citing a color that didn't exist. I called the listed number again. This time, her assistant answered. "Mr. Rhodes, if you continue ignoring directives, we'll be forced to involve law enforcement." I said, "Good. They'll want to see my deed too." Silence, then a click. 2 nights later, I caught the HOA's landscaping contractor measuring my fence with a tape. When I asked what he was doing, he said, "Just checking compliance. They told me this section's encroaching 2 feet past the line." It's the same fence my father built 25 years ago. "Sir, I just work here." I photographed the interaction with a time-stamped image and filed it in my growing binder. Every trespass, every misstep, they were writing my case for me. A few days after, my neighbor Walt knocked, holding 2 envelopes. "They're after me now. Trash can visibility violation. Twice in 1 week." I looked inside. Same wording, same font, same signature. C. Layton. "They're trying to isolate us," I said. "Divide the old owners from the new." He frowned. "Why?" "Because the developer can't start Phase 3 until they control a supermajority, 67% of lots. They're at 64%. He whistled low. 3 more properties. By week's end, I'd built a small coalition. Walt, a young couple named Ramirez, who'd been cited for having a kid's trampoline, and an elderly widow, Mrs. Carver, whose roses were deemed invasive. We met at my place every Sunday afternoon, compared notices, shared coffee, and watched the road for HOA patrol cars. Halfway through our third meeting, Mrs. Carver said quietly, "They act like they own the whole town. My Harold used to say, once they start fining the kids, it's time to call the lawyer." I smiled, already ahead of her. "I've got one in mind." I contacted attorney Allison Blake, a municipal law specialist I'd met years ago on a public works bid. She was sharp, no nonsense, and known for her thermos coffee and ink-stained cuffs. When I explained the situation, she said, "Sounds like selective enforcement mixed with bad recording practices. That's a potent combo if documented right." She instructed me to file open records requests for all meeting minutes, board votes, and communications with developers for the past 2 years. They'll stall, but the clock's ticking. Under statute, they've got 10 days. The stalling started immediately. Emails bounced. Responses came late, half redacted, or lost in transition. Still, I documented every delay. On day 11, a courier dropped off a fat envelope, 30 pages of board minutes. In one section, dated April 12, 2023, I found a line that made my pulse jump. Motion to pursue reclassification of Parcel 23 contingent upon non-residency verification. Moved by Treasurer K. Davis, seconded by President Layton, carried 4-1. There it was, their plan, in writing. I printed 3 copies, one for Allison, one for my records, one for something I was planning that would require patience and timing. Halfway through reading the minutes, I received a knock at the door. 2 uniformed officers stood there, polite but firm. "Mr. Rhodes?" "Yes, sir." "Got a call from the HOA. Report of trespassing on private property." I handed them the certified deed copy from the county. The younger officer read it, nodded. "Looks like you're fine. Sorry about that. Have a good evening." As they left, I caught Cheryl standing at the end of the cul-de-sac, arms crossed, watching. If you've ever faced an HOA, tell me, are you firmly against them, or do you think they serve a purpose when done right? Drop your thoughts below. And if you've beaten one before, share your tactic. Someone reading this might need it tomorrow. The 10-day clock on my certified letter ran out with no response. That was their first official violation of state property code. It would, and be their last. I drafted another letter, this one shorter. Failure to respond under 209.05 constitutes waiver of administrative claim. Further actions will proceed accordingly. Then I waited and documented. Every tick of the clock sounded like a nail sealing their case shut. By mid-April, their silence had turned into something noisier, slander. The HOA newsletter suddenly carried a community reminder about unauthorized occupants causing property value decline. A photo of my porch appeared blurred in the corner. No names, but everyone knew. I could feel it in the way people slowed their cars when passing my mailbox, how the dog walkers crossed to the other side of the street. Still, the data trail mattered more than gossip. I'd learned long ago that bureaucracies die by paperwork, not pitchforks. So I kept filing, copying, stamping. The binder grew thicker, its metal rings squeaking under the weight of each new violation notice. Allison called one morning, voice low. They filed an amended lien attempt, she said, but they did it under an invalid authorization code. You've got them in procedural default if you want to press. Not yet, I told her. Let them think I'm cornered. I want to see how far they'll overreach. For anyone wondering how far an HOA can go, here's a quick fact. In Texas, an HOA can file a lien for unpaid assessments, but not for arbitrary fines unless allowed in recorded bylaws. And those fines must be specific, notice-based, and curable within a set period, usually 10 days. Knowledge nugget number 1 reinforced: selective fines without curable terms are unenforceable. That night, Walt and I sat on my porch. He brought his thermos of black coffee and a pack of peanut butter crackers. The cicadas were starting early. "You think they'll back off?" he asked. "No," I said. "They're building a case for optics. Once they've got enough violations stacked, they'll claim pattern of disregard. That's when we flip it. Flip it how? You'll see." A week later, I drove to the county tax assessor's office again. My real goal isn't taxes, it was map data. I paid $6 for a full parcel shapefile export. At home, I overlaid it on Google Earth and discovered the HOA's common amenity corridor actually overlapped a city-maintained stormwater channel, meaning they'd been collecting dues for land they didn't own or maintain. That was the seed of leverage I needed. While I built my case, Cheryl staged her first big spectacle. Saturday morning, she showed up with 3 board members and a sheriff's deputy for site inspection. I met them at the gate, binder in hand. She smiled tight. "Mr. Rhodes, we are verifying property line compliance. Please unlock the fence." I kept my tone calm. "Unless you have a civil order or warrant, this is trespass. You can view from the sidewalk." The deputy looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, he's right. Without probable cause or court authorization, we stay outside." Her smile cracked for half a second. "We'll note your lack of cooperation." "Please do," I said, holding up my phone. "This call is being recorded as permitted under Texas's one-party consent statute." Her eyes flashed. "You're making a mistake." "No, ma'am, just an archive. For everyone watching, where should the line be? Should an HOA be able to enter your yard for an inspection? Or is that private property unless there's cause? I'm curious. Leave your answer below." The tension didn't stop at the fence. Within 48 hours, I got hit with a noise disturbance citation, even though I'd spent that night at my sister's. The timestamp on the notice? 11:47 p.m., exactly when my porch camera recorded Cheryl's car idling by the curb. I sent Allison the footage. She wrote back, "Perfect chain of evidence. Keep it sealed, unedited, logged with date hash." My next step was subtle. Using a quiet LLC I'd formed years ago for side consulting work, Rhodes Engineering Partners, I filed a request to purchase rights-of-way maintenance contracts along the stormwater channel. The city clerk approved it in 10 business days. For $500, my LLC now held the maintenance license for the same land the HOA claimed as theirs. Reversal number 1 was taking shape. They just didn't know it yet. The following Friday, the HOA hosted a community meet and greet at the clubhouse. Cheryl used it to parade new landscaping plans and recreational upgrades right over the disputed corridor. I attended quietly, camera off, recorder on. She clicked through slides showing a new walking path and benches, exactly across the easement I now legally maintained. "Construction starts in June," she announced. "All assessments increase by 15%. 15. The number landed like a hammer. When the meeting ended, I shook hands, smiled, left without a word. In the parking lot, I texted Allison. "Phase 1 done. They're building on city easement." She replied with a single thumbs-up emoji. That weekend, I posted a note to my small coalition's group chat. "Stay quiet. Keep collecting letters. Something's about to break." They didn't have to wait long. On Monday, a backhoe rolled in to mark dig lines, bright orange paint cutting across my grass. I stepped out with the maintenance permit in hand, laminated, ready for battle. The foreman looked up from his clipboard. "Sir, we're authorized by the HOA to start grading." I handed him the document. "Not anymore. You're standing on municipal easement maintained by Rhodes Engineering Partners under city license number C4185. Touch that ground and you're liable." He blinked. "I'll call my supervisor." "Please do." As he made the call, I photographed every painted line, every cone, every machine. Later, I printed them with timestamps. Visual beat number 1, a collage of orange lines stopping inches short of my fence. When the sun set, I sat back on the porch, binder on my lap, and whispered again, "All right, Dad, we're halfway there." By Tuesday morning, word had spread that the HOA's beautification project had been mysteriously halted. Cheryl's emails went out in waves. Unexpected permitting issue. Temporary pause for review. Community patience appreciated. What she didn't say was that the city's right-of-way office had frozen their work order after my license flag triggered an automated conflict check. Bureaucracy had finally decided to fight on my side. I didn't brag. I let them simmer. The foreman's photos, the orange lines, the halted machinery, they were proof enough that my leverage was real. Allison sent me a short text that morning. "Hold position. Don't show the cards yet." I kept documenting, but the retaliation doubled. Someone dumped a bag of yard waste across my driveway one night. Another day, a wellness check request hit the local police dispatch, claiming an elderly man was wandering disoriented on my property. The officers who responded knew me by then. "You've got persistent enemies," one said, shaking his head. "File a harassment report, it'll stack." I did. Report number 24, 11867. Walt started getting nervous. "They're hitting everyone who sides with you," he said. "My mailbox got flagged for rust. You've seen my mailbox, Daniel. It's aluminum." "Document it," I told him. "Photos, timestamps, keep everything." "What's the end game here?" "When they move to enforce that 15% assessment, we make our move." Allison agreed. "Let them hold a vote. If they adopt an illegal assessment while your maintenance license stands, you've got a textbook case of fiduciary breach." The waiting wasn't easy. There were nights I'd lie awake listening to the hum of distant sprinklers, wondering if my dad would have approved of all this cloak and dagger legal chess. I could almost hear his voice, steady, practical, telling me not to let the bastards turn our home into a ledger line. Then, at 2:17 a.m. on April 28th, an HOA patrol car idled outside my fence again. Headlights on, stationary. I walked out with my phone recording. Cheryl herself stepped out this time, clipboard in hand, wearing a reflective vest like some sort of suburban law officer. "Ms. Layton," I said evenly, "you're trespassing under city easement law." She smirked. "Public right-of-way, Mr. Rhodes. Don't flatter yourself. Not after license number C4185. I held up the laminated permit. "This land's maintained by my firm. You're on a commercial easement. That makes this business interference." Her smile faded for the first time. "You wouldn't?" "Oh, I would," I said, "because you already have." For anyone watching, what's the penalty supposed to be when HOA officers harass homeowners after hours? A fine? Removal? Probation? Drop your take below. I want to see what justice looks like to you. The next morning, Cheryl emailed the neighborhood. "Community reminder. Private surveillance not authorized without board consent." She was trying to scare me out of recording. It backfired. Texas is on. E-party consent state for audio and no restriction on video in public-facing areas. Her email just became Exhibit C9. That week, Allison filed a pre-litigation notice citing patterned harassment, procedural non-compliance, and unrecorded encumbrance attempts. It wasn't a lawsuit yet, just a warning shot with a lawyer's letterhead. And Cheryl? She doubled down again, announcing an emergency board vote for May 10th to approve the assessment hike. Perfect. The stage was setting itself. Meanwhile, I expanded my circle. Through a friend at the City Utilities Department, I met a quiet compliance auditor named Rita Chen, 30-ish, fast talker, carried a notebook that never left her side. She reviewed my documents over coffee and said, "You've got a neat little bomb here. Their financials don't reconcile. Assessment allocations exceed maintenance costs by 19%. You could bring this to the county auditor." "Would that make it public?" I asked. "Very, and political, which might not be bad." I thanked her, slid her a USB drive with copies of the ledgers, and asked her to verify them. 2 days later, she confirmed. They're running deficits on paper while stockpiling dues in an unreported reserve fund, about $142,000 unaccounted for. That was bigger than leverage. It was a detonator. Knowledge nugget number 2. In most jurisdictions, HOA boards are fiduciaries. Misreporting reserves or using assessments for unauthorized purposes constitutes breach of fiduciary duty, civilly actionable, and, in egregious cases, criminally prosecutable. By early May, my binder had grown to 4 inches thick. I labeled it Operation Easement. Inside, certified deeds, timestamps, audio transcripts, fiscal mismatches, and every citation they'd ever sent me. The last page was blank on purpose. That was for the meeting I knew was coming. The day before the vote, Walt dropped by, looking uneasy. "You sure? You want to go through with this? People are scared of her." "Then let them watch someone not be," I said. He chuckled, half proud, half afraid. "You've got more guts than sense." "Maybe, but sometimes that's how neighborhoods get saved." And then, the morning of May 10th, I shaved, ironed a shirt, and drove to the clubhouse with my binder under my arm. The parking lot was full. You could feel the tension in the air like static before a storm. Inside, Cheryl stood at the podium, gavel in hand, smiling that PR smile. "Good evening, everyone. This special session concerns the budget adjustment for Phase 3 development." I took a seat in the back row. Allison was beside me, calm as a cat. Rita sat near the wall, notebook open. Walt and the Ramirezes came too. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. As Cheryl called the vote, I watched her hand tremble slightly. Maybe she sensed what was coming. I waited until the motion passed, 4-1 again, and then I stood. Binder in hand, voice steady. "Madam President," I said, "before you adjourn, I need the floor for a brief property clarification." Every head turned. She hesitated, eyes narrowing. "You're not recognized, Mr. Rhodes." I stepped forward anyway. "That's all right. The city already recognized me." And with that, I opened the binder. The sound of the metal ring snapping open cut through the room like a starter's pistol. Everyone froze, the kind of silence that feels weighted, electric. I laid the laminated maintenance license across the table first, face up so the gold city seal caught the light. "This," I said, "is City License C4185. It authorizes Rhodes Engineering Partners to maintain the stormwater channel that runs through the parcel you've just voted to develop." Murmurs rippled through the room. Cheryl tried to regain control. "Mr. Rhodes, you're out of order. The association's counsel was never consulted on the license conflict," I interrupted, sliding forward the next sheet. "Here's your recorded CCR amendment referencing adjacency to Parcel 23. The problem is, Parcel 23 isn't T in your jurisdiction. I have a certified chain of title report right here proving my property was excluded from the HOA's common interest at formation, recorded under document 1998-2117. Her face went pale. "That's not possible. It's public record." I pointed toward Rita at the side wall. "And this is Ms. Chen, compliance auditor with the City Utilities Department. She can confirm that your board submitted overlapping claims for maintenance reimbursement on city land. That's misappropriation under Para 32.45 of the Texas Penal Code." Gasps from the back row. Walt muttered, "Holy hell." Allison leaned forward, voice crisp. "Madam President, my client is offering you an opportunity to correct this before state regulators and insurers receive copies. Would you like to proceed in executive session, or shall we continue here?" Cheryl's composure cracked. She turned to her board. "We need a recess." I said calmly, "Before you do, I'd like the deputy from Code Enforcement to acknowledge something." A uniformed officer, Sergeant Patch on his sleeve, stepped forward. "We reviewed Mr. Rhodes's documents this afternoon. His license is valid. Any continued work on that easement without his written consent violates municipal code." The room erupted. One homeowner shouted, "You mean they raised our dues for nothing?" Another yelled, "You lied to us." For a heartbeat, Cheryl looked like she might faint. Then she slammed the gavel. "Recess for 10 minutes. She stalked off, heels clacking. That was reversal number 1. The secret leverage, my easement rights, had detonated right on schedule. Outside on the clubhouse steps, Walt clapped me on the back. "You just pulled the pin, son." "Not yet," I said. "We're still holding the spoon." From that moment on, retaliation turned personal. Overnight, someone keyed my truck. Then my mailbox vanished, gone, concrete post and all. I filed PTO, police reports of course, but the one that hit hardest came by email. An anonymous message. "You'll regret embarrassing people who run this community." I read it 3 times before forwarding it to Allison. She replied within minutes. "We escalate now. Full documentation. Restraining order if necessary." Fear came knocking around midnight that week. I woke to the sound of footsteps outside my window, crunching gravel. When I flipped on the porch light, the sound stopped. Just the swaying shadow of my dad's flagpole in the breeze. For a second, I thought about leaving, selling, walking away, starting over somewhere without boards and bylaws. But then I saw the carved initials under the porch rail, DR plus JR 2002. Dad had cut those himself after we finished sealing the wood that summer. That memory steadied me. I wasn't done yet. You ever been pushed so far that walking away feels like losing your name? Tell me below. What was that moment for you? And did you fight back or leave it behind? I'm genuinely curious how people decide where their line is. By week's end, I had everything backed up. Digital copies on a separate drive, timestamps logged. Rita finalized her report on the HOA's reserve fund discrepancies. $142,218 confirmed. Allison drafted a summary packet. Preliminary evidence of fiduciary breach and selective enforcement. We agreed on the next step. submit the file to the county auditor, and request a public oversight review. The moment it became public record, Cheryl's authority would crumble. But before we could file, she struck again. This time, with a notice of suspension. Effective immediately, my voting privileges and community access were revoked pending behavioral review. I laughed out loud when I read it. Behavioral review? I wasn't a teenager caught drinking at the pool. I was a licensed engineer owning my father's house. But it was perfect. Another unlawful act. Another documented overreach. Allison smiled when she saw it. This plays right into our reform clause draft. Reform clause? Asked. You'll see. We don't just want them fined, we want them fixed. That night I sat by the window again, watching the porch light reflect on the binder's cover. I could feel the weight of everything, months of notes, sleepless nights, fear and fury. But beneath it, something steadier had started to grow. Purpose. I wasn't fighting just for me anymore. I was fighting for every neighbor who'd been bullied into silence. The morning after that behavioral review notice, my porch looked like a campaign headquarters. Walt showed up with donuts and his old flip phone. Figured you'd want photos from another camera, just in case. The Ramirez's brought coffee. Even Mrs. Carver shuffled over with her walker, roses clipped in a jar. For luck, she said, setting them beside my binder. You'll need beauty to balance their ugliness. We laughed, but the air felt heavier than ever. That was the day I decided to stop reacting and start scripting the finale. I emailed Allison. Time to trigger the audit and set a public date. I want this on record. She replied almost instantly. Filed, May 21st, county hearing room. 2 weeks. That's all the time the HOA had left to realize how deep they were buried. But Cheryl didn't slow down. She doubled the pressure. New flyers around the subdivision claiming malicious litigation threatens neighborhood stability. She even called a neighborhood unity walk, framing herself as the defender of peace. Walt ripped one of the flyers off a lamppost and brought it to me. She's trying to make you the villain. Good, I said. Every story needs one before the twist. I spent those 2 weeks building what Allison called the countdown file. Inside it were every notice, every false claim, every duplicate fine, and now, thanks to Rita, printouts of internal HOA email chains showing discussions about fast-tracking the amenity phase before non-compliant parcels interfere. I didn't ask how Rita got those. She just winked when she handed them over and said, let's call it civic spirit. Knowledge. Nugget number 3. HOA board emails discussing enforcement or expenditure decisions are discoverable under open records laws if the HOA operates as a common interest corporation. Transparency isn't optional when the public's money or property rights are on the line. The closer we got to the hearing, the more their tactics turned desperate. Anonymous calls to code enforcement, trash can citations, a drone hovering over my backyard. Every time it happened, I logged the time and took a photo. My evidence spreadsheet had reached 147 entries. One night, around midnight, I caught the drone again. I walked out with a flashlight and waved. The drone darted higher, then vanished. I don't know why, but I laughed, out loud. A short, cracked sound that startled even me. It wasn't hysteria, it was relief. They were exhausting themselves trying to shake me, and I was still standing. I emailed Allison the footage. She replied with a single line, "They're burning credibility faster than we could ever buy it." 2 days before the hearing, Rita sent me an encrypted file, final audit summary. The HOA's reserve fund deficit had ballooned to $153,912 once late penalties were factored in. The report concluded with a phrase that made my pulse kick. Evidence supports formal inquiry into misappropriation of community funds. That was the fuse. May 21st, arrived under a thick, humid Texas morning. The county hearing room was small, paneled in pale oak with a faint buzz from the fluorescent lights. About 30 people showed up. Neighbors, a few reporters, even a local realtor who'd been sniffing around for gossip. Cheryl entered flanked by her board, all stiff smiles and pearl necklaces. I walked in quietly with Allison, binder under my arm, Rita just behind me carrying her notebook like a shield. The hearing officer, a middle-aged man with salt hair and a calm, bureaucratic tone, opened the session. We're here to address concerns regarding Ridgehaven Estates Homeowners Association financial and jurisdictional practices. Cheryl started first, of course. These allegations are politically motivated, she said smoothly. Mr. Rhodes is a disgruntled owner who refuses to comply with basic standards. Allison rose immediately. Then let's discuss standards, sir. Specifically, fiduciary ones. She laid down the audit report. The officer adjusted his glasses. Ms. Layton, these figures, are they accurate? Cheryl blinked, voice catching for the first time. Those reserves are transitional, temporarily reallocated pending unauthorized construction, Rita cut in. On city land. That's when I slid the maintenance license across the table, the same one that had stopped the bulldozers. City license C42185, I said steady. Legally recorded. Overlaps your planned amenity zone. The officer looked up. Is this valid? A code enforcement officer from the back row stood. Yes, sir. Verified. We issued it. It was over. Not officially yet, but you could feel the momentum shift, like watching a storm finally lose its thunder. Then Cheryl made her mistake. We acted in good faith, she snapped. Our bylaws give us discretion, Allison cut in coldly. Not discretion to fabricate fines, falsify vote counts, or misappropriate assessments. That's not discretion. That's fraud. The hearing officer held up a hand. Enough. Findings will be issued within 7 business days. But Cheryl couldn't let it end quietly. She leaned toward me as we packed our papers. You think you've won? You've only made enemies. I smiled. Maybe. But they're smaller every day. As we left, Walt grinned. You just punched a hole through their dam. And he was right. Back home that night, I logged the hearing details as entry number 148. Then I printed one last sheet, labeled, "It reversal countdown complete," and slipped it into the binder. The next part would be the flood. The county's findings came 5 days later, not 7. An unmarked envelope slid into my mailbox at noon sharp. Inside, a 3-page summary stamped preliminary determination, subject to public review. I read it twice, then called Allison, voice shaking just slightly. They ruled probable cause for breach of fiduciary duty, I said. Her tone stayed calm but tight. Then it's time for the public set piece. You ready? I glanced out at the porch where the flag swayed against a cloudy sky. More than ready. The HOA scheduled an emergency community update that same week, clearly scrambling to control the damage. Cheryl must have figured a performance could dilute the truth. She underestimated how much documentation travels faster than rumors when you give people something real to see. By the time the meeting started, the clubhouse was packed, standing room only, 20 degrees hotter inside than out. You could hear the whisper of paper programs and the hum of a dozen phone cameras recording. The smell of nervous perfume and overbrewed coffee filled the air. Cheryl took the podium, her voice trembling beneath forced confidence. We're aware of exaggerated claims circulating online. Tonight, I want to clear the air. That was my cue. I stood from the back row, holding a thick folder labeled Exhibit Summary. Allison followed, her heels clicking against the laminate floor. Rita and Walt stayed behind me like a quiet wall of witnesses. I walked to the front, stopped 3 feet from the podium, and spoke into the air, steady, level. I'd like the board to enter into record the county's preliminary determination regarding financial mismanagement. Cheryl blinked. Mr. Rhodes, you are not recognized. The law recognizes me, I said, sliding the document across the podium edge. You raised dues by 15% to fund construction on property you didn't own, and you might. Reported $153,912 in reserves. That's not exaggeration. That's math. Murmurs again. Louder this time. Anger, disbelief, vindication. Allison stepped up beside me, calm as glass. For transparency, the county auditor and code enforcement are present tonight. She nodded toward the back. 2 uniformed officers and a man in a county badge stepped forward. The crowd gasped. The officer cleared his throat. Under municipal order, we are confirming that the association's construction activities are suspended pending review. Financial practices are under investigation. Please remain civil. That was visual beat number 2. The moment the uniform stepped forward under the buzzing lights, the crowd lit up by cell phone flashes, Cheryl's smile fracturing like thin ice. She tried one last line. This man's vendetta is costing all of you your peace, your property values. I cut her off. No, ma'am. You did that when you forgot this neighborhood was made of people, not percentages. Applause broke like thunder. Some shouted. Some just sighed in relief. Walt's voice rose above the rest. About damn time. Cheryl's gavel clattered to the floor as she turned away. The other board members sat frozen, eyes darting like trapped birds. Outside afterward, reporters from a local outlet hovered near the curb. One asked, "Mr. Rhodes, are you filing suit?" I said, "I don't need to." The truth already did. That night, Allison called with the aftermath. 2 board resignations, treasurer and secretary. Cheryl's trying to negotiate early termination. I exhaled. Then it's time for reversal too. She smiled over the phone. You really thought this through. We drafted the reform proposal that same evening. Term limits for board members. Transparent digital voting. Independent ethics committee elected by residents. Fee rollback to pre-assessment rates. Annual public audit. I wanted justice. Tice, yes, but I wanted reform even more. When Cheryl's lawyer finally reached out, the conversation was short. My client is willing to step down in exchange for cessation of further complaints. Allison, I said quietly, make the deal, but tie it to reform. No whitewash. Within 48 hours, the settlement draft circulated. HOA to implement all 5 reforms in exchange for mutual non-litigation. Signed, notarized, filed publicly. By then, the story had gone local viral. The headline in the Plano Chronicle read, Homeowners Evidence Forces HOA Overhaul. Board resigns amid county audit. Neighbors stopped by my porch again, this time smiling instead of whispering. Kids rode their bikes past without their parents pulling them back. Mrs. Carver planted new roses near her fence. Walt brought beer that evening. You realize, Dan, you didn't just win, you rewrote the rules. I grinned. No, we all did. I just read them out loud. Before we called it a night, he asked, so what now? I looked out over the cul-de-sac, still half lit by porch lamps and the faint buzz of crickets. Now we build something worth inheriting. But even as I said it, I knew there was one last thing left to do. A symbolic act, something my father would have understood. The final reckoning had to be visible. 2 weeks after the meeting, the neighborhood looked lighter. No patrol cars, no clipboard enforcers checking mailbox angles. The fountain in front of the clubhouse was finally fixed. Ironic, considering it had been dry for 3 years under Cheryl's beautification fund. That evening, the new interim board held its first open-air session on the clubhouse lawn. Folding chairs, lemonade jugs, kids running around the edges. It felt human again. I sat in the back with Walt, Allison, and Rita. For once, I wasn't the focus, just another neighbor with a seat and a story. Cheryl didn't attend. She'd resigned officially, citing per bias, sonal reasons. Rumor said the county's review panel was still negotiating restitution, and the HOA's insurer had suspended their coverage pending audit. It wasn't vindictive satisfaction, it was relief, like the sound of gravel under new tires after months of being stuck in mud. When the floor opened for resident comments, Mrs. Carver raised her hand. We've spent years talking about what we can't do, she said. Maybe now we start talking about what we can. Her voice cracked just a little, but everyone clapped. I walked home that night past the pond my father built. The moon reflected off it like polished steel, and for the first time since he'd gone, I felt like I'd kept my promise. The house wasn't just standing, it was defended, redefined. The next morning I called Allison. Can I use the remaining settlement funds for something public? She laughed. That's your money, counselor. What are you thinking? Scholarship, I said. In Dad's name. For kids here who want to study civil or environmental engineering. Call it the Rhodes Foundation for Honest Foundations. Poetic and tax-deductible, she said. We filed it the same week. By July, the reforms went live. Transparent voting, capped dues, open financial reports. The HOA now published every expenditure online. Even the meeting agendas looked like real governance, not gatekeeping. Knowledge nugget number 4. Transparency clauses, once codified, can't be reversed without a supermajority. Sunshine laws aren't just policy, they're prevention. The final reform vote passed 92% in favor. Walt toasted it on his porch with a half-warm beer. "You think this sticks?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "because people finally saw how to hold power without hating it." Later that night, I burned the last of my violation notices in the fire pit, those curling pages with faded stamps and hollow threats. The smoke rose clean, no bitter pies left in it. If you believe I fought the right way, and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend. Subscribe so future videos reach you first. And as responsible neighbors, share this story. Someone out there's fighting their own version of it right now. The morning after, I received one final envelope from the county clerk. Inside was a note. Case 24-11867. Closed. HOA compliance verified. Attached was a single photo someone had taken at the public meeting. Me holding the license, Cheryl frozen mid-expression, the crowd behind us caught mid-cheer. I framed it next to my father's blueprint of the house. 2 pieces of paper, one began it, one protected it. The following weekend, the community organized its first Founders Day, honoring the original builders of our neighborhood. Kids painted birdhouses, the Ramirez's grilled, and Mrs. Carver won the raffle with her rose jam. As dusk fell, someone turned on the lights around the pond, and their reflection danced on the water like gold threads. A little boy tugged my sleeve and said, "You're the guy who fixed the rules, right?" I smiled. "No, kiddo. We just remembered who they were supposed to serve." And as the laughter echoed across the lawns, I realized the story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. When people stand up, even quietly, systems have to sit down. Next case? Let's just say another HOA across the county just raised its fines to $1,000 without a vote. We'll see how that goes.